Hello everyone, this is Dr. Sedhupathy, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science with Artificial Intelligence and Data Science, Dr. SNS Rajalakshmi College of Arts and Science, Coimbatore. I am very much happy to meet you all once again. I hope you all have learned at least basics about loops. What is for loop and how it works, what is while loop and how it has the conditions, and what is do while, how do while is differ from while loop, how for loop is preferred over while and do while. So today we are going to discuss about some different kind of aspects or scenarios how these three loops can be used, which comes under the topic odd loops. We can sometimes say some other common terminologies also instead of odd loops. So because we are going to discuss about the different conditions which are used inside the loops, which are slightly differ from how we used to study earlier. Let's go to the topic today. So agenda for today's discussion will be important considerations regarding loops, or it may be how the things can be used, and the nesting of loops, multiple initializations inside the loop, and the odd loops and example programs related to odd loops. So here, while you are using loops, you're supposed to consider certain things, or you're supposed to keep in mind certain things. Anyway, the loops must end at least in certain case, at least once throughout the program, otherwise it becomes indefinite. So you have to ensure the loop tests a condition that will eventually become false at least once to avoid infinite loops. And then a small consideration will be the block of statements inside the loop may be single line or multi-line. If you have multiple lines, you must use the parenthesis, or you have only single line command for the loop, the parentheses are optional. Here is an example for nesting of loops. From the right side you can see for loop example. There is a for loop with the increment variable r equal to 1, r less than or equal to 3 and r plus plus, that is actually represented as outer loop. Inside the first for loop there is another for loop with the initialization variable c equal to 1, the condition is c less than or equal to 2 and the increment is c plus plus. Inside there are two segments, one is an assignment operator r plus c which is assigned to sum, and another one is printf statement which prints the three answers r, c and sum. The thing you have to understand here is nesting of loops. We have discussed already about nested if-else statements. The same way here, there is a for loop segment inside another for loop segment, which is simply called nesting of loops. Then comes to multiple initialization in the for loop. The initialization expression of a for loop can contain multiple statements separated by commas. Multiple statement can also be used in the incrementation expression. Only one expression is allowed in the test expression, which can contain multiple conditions linked with logical operators. Syntax for statement, as we discussed already, there is an initialization segment, there is a test condition and increment condition. Here is an example for initialization with multiple variables, and there is a multiple increment expression and only one test expression. From the example you can able to observe that inside the for loop there is two variables, namely I and j are initialized. I is initialized with 1 and j is initialized with 2. In the condition part there is only one variable is checked. If you want to use more than two variables, you are supposed to use logical operators or relational operators. There is an increment part, in the increment part, two variables are incremented, I and j with 1. And there is a printf statement as usual, we know. In this test expression, only one test expression is available in this example. Then coming to OR loop segment. Sometimes, it is very unclear how many times a loop needs to execute. You may decide how you are going to use loops, but you are unable to identify, or you are unable to capture, or you are unable to fix how many times, number of times your loop going to execute. The loop execution time maybe sometimes depends on user input. So in that situation, you can use conditions based on the user inputs. User inputs is given inside the loop segment. Here is one example. Here is one such example. This can be handled using loops like do, while, for, or while, where the exit condition is based on the user input or other runtime conditions. Here is one such example. Here the value for the variable another is received from the keyboard inside the do block using scanf statement. If you give input as the character y, the loop will execute. If you use some other character, the loop comes out. So this example works or execute based on the user input during the runtime. Here is some other program example. One is from for loop. Here there is no initialization part and there is no increment or decrement part, only condition part is available. So this for loop will execute until or as far as your user is giving yes, which means y. If the user enters any other character apart from y, the program or the for loop terminates. The same way here, while loop also. If the user enters any other character apart from y, the while loop comes out. And here is some consolidated things regarding three loops. Do while loop executes the block at least once and repeats based on the condition. For loop can also be used in an unconventional way to perform a loop an unknown number of times by omitting the initialization and increment expression. While loop repeats as long as the condition remains true but may not execute at all if the condition is false initially. Thank you for your patient listening. We'll look forward with some other interesting topic. Thank you my dear learners once again.